Hello and welcome to the Candlelight Podcast, where I, Mohamed Abdalla, talk about different topics, including some of my favorites, which are movies, martial arts, and philosophy. Let's start with this week's quote. And by the way, guys, it's not just any quote, it's a hadith. Hadith from our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, this hadith it's not going to be clear as to why I used it, the specific one right now, but it will be in a second. So, the hadith is لتفتحن القسطنطينية ولنعم الأمير أميرها ولنعم الجيش ذلك الجيش. This hadith is given to us by Imam Ahmed in his Musnad, and it talks about how the historical city of Constantinople is going to be conquered by a great leader and alongside a great army. And this hadith, as we can see, has materialized by through the actions of Mohammed al-Fatih, the Ottoman Sultan Mohammed al-Fatih. He's the one who conquered Constantinople. He's the one who made this, was the one that was kind of prophesied in this hadith, as we believe. And he not only conquered Constantinople, but actually moved on to conquer a lot of Eastern Europe, including modern-day countries like Bosnia, like Bulgaria and Romania, as we'll discuss in a second. So the reason I chose this hadith for this week's episode is to really relate to what we're going to be talking about. And we are going to talk about, in this episode, the history of specifically the country of Romania. And the reason I decided to do this research about this specific region was because it was at the request of one of my subscribers, one of my very first subscribers, Elijah Swanson. Shout out. He kind of wanted me to talk about the impact of the Moldavia, historical principality of Moldavia on societal norms in the 1300s. So I don't know much about that region other than what I told you, that it was conquered by Muhammad al-Fatih, and it was had a lot of complex political events occur in that place. So I don't know much about it, and I can't really talk about, after doing my research, like my very minimal research, I can't talk about specifically what Elijah wants me to talk about. I don't know much about societal norms, and it's how Moldavia specifically impacted that at that time. What I did find out is how interesting that region actually is with regards to political history. So you've got these three principalities, these three territories right next to each other: Moldavia, Wallachia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, please tell me if I pronounce anything wrong, and Transylvania. So these three are what basically modern day Romania is comprised of. These three territories that existed back then and kind of still exist, although not independently. Now they're one country, and the history of that region is so interesting. How Hungary was at war with Wallachia, and how Wallachia had history with the Ottoman Empire, and Moldavia was there, and also Transylvania, and how that all kind of went together. I guess to start off, the name that really comes up a lot when you talk about Moldavia is Stephen III of Moldavia, who ruled for 47 years, and the Moldavian Empire, if you could call it that, was at its peak during his rule, because he really did a lot for it. He was a great leader, according to them. He kind of stabilized the region, really kind of built it up. However, I don't want to talk about him. Let's specifically, I want to talk about something more interesting that I found earlier than his time. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, Muhammad al-Fatih, the Ottoman ruler, was the person who conquered Constantinople, and he was prophesied in that hadith. Now he moves on to conquer Eastern Europe, and some of the territories that are in Eastern Europe are Moldavia, Wallachia, and Transylvania. And the very interesting events ensue in that time. So, to give you some context, Wallachia, it's one of the three territories, as we mentioned, and it was ruled by someone called Vlad Dracul. Now, his name, the person's name, the leader, is Vlad, and his kind of nickname is Dracul, which means back then it meant the dragon, and more recently, currently, it means the devil. And he was the ruler of that place, and it was a lot of political tension going on. He had issues with Hungary, with a neighboring kingdoms that surrounded the area, and he had problems with the Ottoman Empire as well. But the Ottoman Empire actually, which kind of was manifested in the Ottoman Empire eventually capturing him and imprisoning him for less than a year. And before returning him to become the leader of Wallachia again, because they kind of didn't like the ruler that was there already, because after he was captured, there was a new ruler, and they kind of wanted Vlad to go back to rule because that was better for them politically. So they kind of like returned him, supported him in becoming the new ruler there, or like reinstated as the ruler. But in order to make sure that he will be loyal, right, at this point to the Ottoman Empire and actually be pay tribute and things like of that sort, the Ottoman Empire decided to keep two of his sons with them, to keep two of his sons to study and learn the sciences, and get an education in basically the Ottoman Empire. And then they would be returned when they are grown and ready to rule in the interests of the Ottoman Empire. So, what happened was Vlad Dracul passed away, and there was a lot of political scuffle, and the two sons of his, Radu, and Vlad the Third, also known as Vlad the Impaler. And if you're familiar with that region, you would be familiar with this name. He's considered one of Romania's national heroes, which is mind-boggling as to why, for the reasons I'm gonna talk about soon. So, Radu and Vlad, they're the sons of Vlad Dracul, and Vlad was returned, the son. Oh, by the way, Vlad the Third is also called Dracula. Dracula means that he's the son of the devil, because his father was named Dracul, so he's Dracula, the son of the devil. And there's not a more fitting name you can give this person, the son of the devil. Perfect for him, as we'll soon find out. So, Vlad was returned to rule in his father's stead because his father passed away in Wallachia. I'm like pronouncing it as different every time I'm saying it. Let's stick to Wallachia. Let's stick with that because I'm not sure what is the correct pronunciation. So he is returned to rule there because he's studied and raised under the Ottomans. So ever since he was a child, so he would be benefiting and be loyal to the Ottomans and really take care of their interests. However, Vlad does the opposite. He actually wants to become independent and rid any Ottoman influence of the region. And this is why he's kind of like sort of a protector of the nation of Romania. So that's how they kind of see him as the hero, because he's really trying to make himself independent, make the country independent, make it so that no foreign powers are controlling it, which is not necessarily foreign powers controlling a country is not necessarily a bad thing. It just depends if the foreign powers are unjustly ruling or not. So anyway, and the way he does it is by being such a brutal warlord. He just did so many horrible things that I can't really express. I can't even articulate because of how grueling they are. The one of the videos that I watched on YouTube that I could find to kind of educate me on this topic was an interesting video called "The Story of Dracula," and it is posted on YouTube in 2013 by the channel The Daily Reminder. Check it out. It's an amazing video that could explain in a much more better way than I can at this moment, at least. So this guy Vlad Dracula, he basically kind of removed any foreign influence from his country by killing and destroying and raiding any Ottoman kind of holds and camps that existed in his region. So in response to that, Muhammad al-Fatih, now he comes in to play again, because Muhammad al-Fatih, he not only conquered Constantinople, now he has to deal with this. He has to deal with this kind of brutalizing warlord that he put in power but turned against him now. So Muhammad al-Fatih put this guy in power in order to take care of the Ottoman interests, but this guy did the opposite of that. So he sent to him emissaries, messengers, to ask for tribute, for homage, for him to come back in the fold. And check out what this guy did, what Vlad did. So basically, when the emissaries entered Vlad's court, Vlad ordered them to take off their turbans because they were Turkish. They had turbans. But the emissaries were not going to do that because they are proud of their heritage. They're not going to take it out for some foreign, foreign leader. It's not the appropriate thing to do. So Vlad, he kind of responded to that by actually nailing their turbans down into their heads, effectively killing them. Basically, he killed them by doing that in a brutal way. And of course, this caused outrage. And Muhammad al-Fatih decided he's going to have none of it. And they went to war, and there was a whole series of events in that region of Romania and Hungary, and how all these kind of countries and, all these superpowers kind of were together, and they fought, and events happened, stuff happened. It's like too much to articulate for me because I'm not really well studied in that, other than the minimal research that I've done. And at the end, Dracula is killed. Not clearly, it's not clear if he is killed by his own people or by the Ottoman forces that fought against him, but he was killed and he was gotten rid of. And his brother Radu, his brother, was actually a Muslim. He reverted to Islam when he was at his time during his stay with the Ottomans, and basically became really loyal to the Muslims. And he wanted to kind of help Vlad come back to the fold, but Vlad was not gonna do that. So there you go. Vlad was eventually killed, and that's, I think, I'm not sure who is the ruler after him, but what I do know is that the Ottoman Empire took control of the region, of the Romanian region, of the three territories of Wallachia, Moldavia, and Transylvania. So after that, a bunch of years after that, man, that region is so like eventful. A bunch of years after that, Michael, son of Patrascu, became the ruler of Romania, now known as kind of like a united region. He united the three territories into one, and he became the very first ruler of modern day Romania, which sees all three territories united, until he was assassinated by the Roman Emperor at the time. So man, it's just so interesting what happened, in that time in that region, and I really enjoyed reading up and like listening to what happened, even though I didn't do much of it. For the time I did, I enjoyed. It was a few hours of just like looking around and reading and being interested in listening. It's like awesome. I really enjoyed it. So thank you, Elijah, for actually recommending me to check out some of that region's history. It was pretty cool. And sorry I couldn't get specifically to what you wanted me to talk about, because I couldn't really necessarily find anything that kind of related to that was like of a big of a scale as this. And this really caught my eye, and I'm really interested about it. Oh, by the way, if you guys want to check out a movie that kind of details some of Muhammad al-Fatih's life, the Ottoman Sultan, check out the movie Fatih 1453. The movie is a Turkish-made film detailing uh, his conquering of Constantinople and how he did that. And so the way that you spell this movie is Fetih, and then the year 1453, because that's the time when Constantinople was conquered. So, oh, and if anyone knows of any movies or TV shows that I can watch depicting all of these complex and interesting events, with regard to Romania, please do let me know. I'd love to check it out and I'd love to share them here because I'd really like to see some sort of, documentation that talks about all of this that is not just, this happened here, this that happened there. No, I want to see this in action, basically. Even if it was a cartoon or something, just any form of media that's related to that, I'd love to watch it. Something that's very historically accurate. So man, really, really fascinating what went on back then. So moving on from that, I am so excited to watch UFC 259 tomorrow. It's gonna be dope. Tomorrow, yeah, because for us, it's Saturday for the place it's gonna be, and the place is gonna go. They're gonna fight at, which is America generally. But for us here in the UAE, it's gonna be in the morning, like 5 in the morning at Sunday, because time difference and stuff. And I have to be awake from then, which usually you wake up at that time because you're gonna pray Fajr. But I'm gonna stay up and actually watch the whole thing. Man, I'm so excited for this card. I think I talked to you guys about it last week. It's so stacked with so many great fights, so many interesting fights that to see. It's rarely ever UFC rarely ever gives us a card this amazing. This might be the greatest. This is definitely the greatest card of the year so far. Well, it's been 2 months, 3 months, so barely, but it's definitely the greatest card of the year and probably one of the greatest, definitely one of the greatest cards of all time. Definitely, man, such a great lineup. So many amazing, so many amazing fighters are gonna fight. So many interesting, title fights especially. And wow, I just can't wait. It's gonna be tomorrow morning, and I have to get up, stay up, and watch it. And I really hope I'm gonna enjoy it. Because man, look at this lineup. Check this out. It's gonna be. From memory. Let me just try to name you guys. The very first fight that strikes me as interesting, as is one of the prelims, in the very prelims, which is like not even the main card. It's the prelims. It's Joseph Benavidez versus Askarov, a Russian, a Dagestani, I believe. And that's the very first interesting fight because this is a flyweight fight between one of the greatest flyweights of all time, Benavidez, versus Askarov, a guy who's going to prove himself in that division. I'm really interested in seeing how that turns out. And then you've got Dominic Cruz versus Casey Kenny. I mean, come on, it's Dominic Cruz, probably the greatest bantamweight of all time. And then you've got Alexander. Wait, no, are we getting to the main card yet or not? I'm not sure. Well, it's from memory, so let's go. So you've got Alexander Rakic, the guy with the steel legs that can kick you to oblivion, against Thiago Majeta Santos. Thiago Santos, the guy that pulverizes opponents, just beats them, like bum rushes them, just lays down hammer fists. This guy is he fought John Jones for the light heavyweight title. He lost a decision, even though it was a close fight, a really close fight. And he lost his most previous fight against Glover Teixeira, who's supposed to be the number one contender at light heavyweight right now, but we'll get to that later. And he's now Thiago Santos fighting Alexander Rakic. This is an amazing fight, an interesting fight that's bound to be entertaining. And then after that, we've got... What have we got? Oh, Islam Makhachev versus Drew Dober. Islam Makhachev, as some of you may know, is Habib's friend. He's a longtime childhood friend of Habib's. I think they're cousins as well. I'm not sure how close they are with regard to the family tree, but I'm pretty sure they're cousins. And it's such an interesting fight because we're going to see how, even more of Islam and how he fares against such a good, formidable opponent such as Drew Dober, the guy who... So basically, we'll see how good he is. I hope he wins because, I'm going to, team Habib all the way, of course. And man, I'm just really interested to see what's gonna happen there. And then you've got the title fights. Man, you've got the title fights. Aljamain Sterling versus the bantamweight champion Piotr Yan. That's an amazing fight. That's an amazing fight of the Russian fighter Piotr Yan, who's the bantamweight champion. He's gonna be fighting Aljamain Sterling, who's a jiu-jitsu wizard. He has so many submission wins. This guy's the real deal. He deserves to be the number one contender. They're gonna fight. It's gonna be awesome. I really hope it lives up to the hype, because man, it is hype. And then after that, you've got Amanda Nunes, the bantamweight champion, bantamweight and featherweight champion, greatest female fighter of all time, versus Megan Anderson. A fight that I'm not really that interested in, because it's WMMA, it's women's MMA. I don't really watch that. I don't like to watch that. I don't like to watch women fighting. It's not something that's interesting to me. It's not something that's exciting for me, because it's women and they're fighting. It doesn't really fit for me. It doesn't really kind of give me the same excitement as two guys when they brawl it out. And then you've got the main event, Israel Adesanya against the Polish power, Jan Blachowicz, the light heavyweight champion. So you got champion versus champion in the main event. You've got Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya, the light heavyweight champion versus the middleweight champion. And Izzy went up in weight in order to see how well he fares against the heavier weight classes. And he actually plans to fight at heavyweight at some point in the future. So he wants to see if he can fare and he can beat the light heavyweight champion to become double champ, and then move up to heavyweight at some point and fight the champion there. And man, am I rooting for him. I'm rooting for Israel to do all of these amazing things, but I'm not rooting against Jan, because man, I like Jan. He's a cool guy. I don't want him to lose. I don't want either of them to lose. But man, someone has to lose, and well, we'll just see what happens. We'll just see who gets to come out on top. And man, I want to see what... Man, I just can't wait for this card. This entire card's so amazing. It's so hype. Rarely you ever get a card this good. And yeah, I just want to see how it all turns out, because this is going to determine the future of many divisions. Islam Makhachev, if he wins, depending on how he wins, he will be a very formidable contender in the lightweight division, which is already stacked. The lightweight division is already, stacked to the brim, with Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, what's his name? Michael Chandler, and Dan Hooker, and Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson, and Paul Felder, and now Islam Makhachev and Beneil Dariush. Man, look at all these contenders. Any one of them could be champion, but, some are better than others, obviously. At the top of the heap right now is undoubtedly Dustin Poirier. He just has to fight Charles Oliveira for the title and to see who's the real, the next champion after Khabib has retired. And but I don't think he's gonna fight Charles Oliveira. He's gonna rematch Conor McGregor for a trilogy fight, because they have to have a rubber match, because Conor beat him once in 2014, and now Dustin has beaten him in 2021, and they want to fight again, both of them, to make that money and seal the deal as to who's the better between them, which I think is Dustin Poirier. He really put a beating on Conor McGregor the second time they fought, which was recently. So we'll see how that turns out, and we'll see how, things will play out with regard to who becomes champion. Because if Conor beats Dustin in the third fight, that's going to be weird, because then he'll be the number one contender for the title fight, and he'll get a title shot, even though he's lost 2 of his last 4 fights. But hey, this isn't a surprise. It's Conor. He's going to be treated with a lot of, he's going to be spoiled and treated with privilege. Because remember when he got a title shot at lightweight against Eddie Alvarez? In the same year, he lost to Nate Diaz? And Khabib was supposed to get that title shot. But then Dana kind of switched out Khabib's name on the contract after it was signed to put in Conor's name, because that's the fight that's going to make the most money. He's going to have a new megastar, which is Conor McGregor, who has two titles, two belts, instead of, one belt, and he can't. He obviously has a way more of a challenge against Habib. So let him fight let him fight Alvarez first, beat Alvarez, become double champ, and then we'll see what happens with regard to the Habib fight. Man, that sucked. That whole series of events was just so shady and so crooked and so corrupt. Yeah, Dana, not a good look for you. But here we are. Here we are, 5 years after that, all of that scuffle, and Habib's on top, and he retired on top, as he deserves to. Man, what a cool guy, Habib. Just, there are very few people I respect more in this world than Habib, in our day and age right now. To be as good as he is, to train, to put in the effort to be as great as he is, and he remains humble, remains down to earth, knows his place in this world, knows his place, and wow, just awe-inspiring, honestly. So amazing to see. God bless him. Allah yahfadha, Allah yabarak lah. Yeah. So that's the situation with the lightweight division. But man, all the other divisions are so interesting as well. Like I said, bantamweight, they have this fight coming up, Aljamain versus Piotr, and man, that division itself is stacked. So we'll see what happens after the title fight, and not to mention all the other divisions such as heavyweight. Man, heavyweight. Stipe Miocic, we talked about this already. I know I've talked about most of these things, but man, I really just love the sport, and I really am, passionate about it and like to follow it. So Stipe Miocic, the heavyweight champion, is going to fight Francis Ngannou, the number one contender, who rightfully deserves to be number one contender. He's knocked out everybody in his path except for Stipe, and he's going to kind of try to avenge his previous loss to Stipe. This is the second fight. This is a rematch, and we'll see what happens after that, because John Jones wants to come up to heavyweight and challenge the champion. But this is the situation with heavyweight. It's kind of weird. You've got John Jones wanting to come up. You've got Derek Lewis, who's kind of the number one contender after knocking out, Curtis Blades. You've got Alexander Volkov, who destroyed his past 4 opponents, I believe, including Alistair Overeem. But he was beaten by Lewis, so Lewis gets the better treatment. And you've got Cyril Gane, who's undefeated, 8-0, I believe, just destroyed a top 5 guy in Jairzinho Rosenstruik. So you've got 3 guys that are aiming for the title shot: Alexander Volkov, Derek Lewis, and Cyril Gane. Cyril Gane, I think. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. So you got these 3 guys, and then you've got John Jones wanting to come up and fight it for the title, and you've got the title fight that's already underway, which is Stipe versus Francis. And check this: if Stipe wins, that's it. He moves on to the next title fight. Cool. But what if he loses? If he loses, then he has to rematch Francis again, because he beat him the first time. Francis beat him the second time, and now they have to fight for the third time, and that just stagnates the division. And it's already stagnated enough with DC and Stipe only fighting each other for the past 3 years. So we'll see what's gonna happen with regard to that division, because man, it is getting less and less shallow. It used to be shallow, but now it's getting more and more interesting with more and more contenders, and we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. I'm really excited for all of this. I'm really excited for what the next bunch of months, what the rest of this year has in store for us with regard to, fights and cards. Man, just can't wait. Anyways, I've talked enough today. I've chewed your ear off with regard to Romanian history and, the sport of MMA. But hey, this is what I like to do. I like to talk sometimes. So anyway, this was the Candlelight Podcast by yours truly, Mohamed Abdalla. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys come back for more. And usually I kind of repeat the quote that I said that I quoted at the beginning of the podcast, but now it's more of a hadith. So I'm just gonna reread the hadith. So as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لتفتحن القسطنطينية ولنعم الأمير أميرها ولنعم الجيش ذلك الجيش. Oh, by the way, I realized I didn't even translate it. Or did I? I'm not sure. So, anyways, see you guys in the next one. Peace.